One.
Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the first in our series of webinars that will take place throughout the month of August. Today, we are gathered for the first of these. This webinar is titled Driving Global Regulatory Harmonization Through Regulatory and Industry Engagement in ICH. My name is Flávia Firmino, Regulatory Policy Lead for Latin America at Eli Lilly and IFPMA ICH Management Committee Delegate. And it's an honor for me to serve as your moderator throughout this today's session. Thank you for joining us and for being part of this important regional and international discussion, which is highly relevant for the present and future of health regulation. This first webinar aims to understand the role of ICH in promoting global regulatory harmonization and consistent standards for the development and approval of medicines. It also seeks to explore the key benefits of ICH membership and active participation, both for regulatory authorities and the pharmaceutical industry. Additionally, we will have the opportunity to hear firsthand from Latin American regulators about their journeys towards ICH membership and the impact it has had on their national regulatory systems. All of this will help us to understand how the pharmaceutical industry can engage in ICH activities through IFPMA and also to contribute to global harmonization efforts. Before we begin, I would like to share a few brief introductions regarding the use of simultaneous interpretation during this webinar. The presentations will be delivered in English, Portuguese, and Spanish, and as well as the panel discussion. But simultaneous interpretation will be available in all languages throughout the entire session. So to select your preferred language, please go to the bottom menu of your screen and click on the globe icon. This will open the list of available languages, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And for the best audio quality, I recommend selecting the mute original audio option if you choose to listen in a language other than the one being used by the speaker. This will ensure a clearer and smoother experience to all of you. Today's agenda has been carefully designed to offer a global, practical, and strategic perspective on ICH and promises to be highly enriching. We will begin with an opening presentation on the benefits of joining ICH, delivered by Geraldine Lissot-Bonnet. Then we will explore the regulator's journey to ICH membership and discuss industry engagement through IFPMA. Later, we will enjoy a dynamic panel discussion, bringing together expert voices for our speakers and also local industry associations to debate how the collaboration between regulators and industry contributes to global harmonization. And finally, we will conclude with a summary of the key takeaways of this session and also a call for future webinars on this ICH series. And I really encourage you to take an active part in this webinar and submit your questions in the Q&A box. Our speakers will do their best to address as many as possible during the session, and any remaining questions will be answered and distributed by IFPMA after the event, so ensuring that no question is left behind. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Geraldine Lissot-Bonnet, who will be presenting on the benefits of joining ICH. Geraldine is the Secretary General of ICH Secretariat based in Geneva. In her role, she is responsible for setting and executing the strategic direction and priorities of ICH. A lawyer by training, she has extensive experience in the health sector, having served as Vice President of Healthcare at GS1 Global Office and Vice Chair of the Fight of Fakes Alliance. Geraldine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Flavia, and thank you for this invitation to start this series of webinars with you. I will just quickly do a technical shift to be able to share my screen. So I'm Géraldine Lissal-Debonnet, and I'm the recently appointed Secretary General for ICH. I expect that most of you are aware of what ICH is, but nevertheless, I will start with a few words of introduction about the International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceutical for Human Use, ICH. So it was first created in, it was created 35 years ago as a forum to get regulatory authorities and pharmaceutical industry together in order to discuss scientific and technical aspects of pharmaceuticals and to develop ICH guidelines. 10 years ago, this forum became an association, meaning that legally, ICH has been established as a non-for-profit legal entity under Swiss law. You will hear in a few minutes why it's important in the journey to ICH. The mission of ICH hasn't changed over the year, and it's still very relevant. It is to really drive global harmonization in order to ensure that medicines are safe, are efficient, and are of good quality, and in order to avoid duplication of efforts in the manufacturing and in the development process of medicines. So the scope of the different ICH guidelines and the different work groups that I will describe in a few minutes can be summarized in these 4 bullet points. The first one is to reduce the use of animal testing without compromising on safety and efficacy of the medicines. The second one is to prevent unnecessary duplication of clinical trials and evaluations. Of course, the core of ICH guidelines is to improve the efficiency of new drug developments and the manufacturing process. And last but not least, to promote public health, to improve the registration process, and to ensure supervision of new medicines in a globally harmonized way across the world. What is not under the scope of ICH guidelines is, I think, very important to clarify because we often get this question. So this is not an exhaustive list, but based on the question we very often have, ICH is not working on any of the regulatory approval for marketing of medicines and new indications in the different regions. ICH is also not working on access to medicines in markets across the world. And ICH is, of course, also not working on cost, reimbursement, price, etc. of the approved medicines. As I said, this is just an overview of what is not in the scope of ICH. And if you have any questions, you will be welcome to come to us in order to check if we can work on a specific topic together. So after this, what is ICH? Why is ICH so important and why industry is organizing this series of webinars today in the LATAM region? It is because it's a very unique organization. It's unique for different reasons. And first, because it's really involving both regulators and industry on the same way. It's based on science. We don't discuss about policies here. And it's based on consensus. Everything that is approved by everyone in a very transparent way. And you will find the outcome of the work publicly available on the ICH website. It is a critical point to mention. Since 10 years and the setting up of the ICH Association as a non-for-profit organization under Swiss law, the governance of ICH is also very clear and is also very much more open to any global membership and observership. As I said already, there is a limited number of players, and I will come back to the criteria to join the ICH forum, but it's always with a very comparable regulatory and technical capability. It is really critical to ensure the good quality and the efficiency and usefulness of the guidance developed by ICH. Last but not least, there is a strong commitment of regulators to implement the outcome of the work done by ICH. And there is also this platform, which is allowing the members and the observers to access all the relevant information, but also anyone among the stakeholders to access the information on the ICH website. So how to join ICH? You have different possibilities. The first one is to become an ICH member. And you have also another possibility, which is a bit lighter and very often a first step to join ICH membership, which is to be an observer. The criteria to be an ICH member are different if you are a regulator or if you are an industry representative. And in all cases, it's always based on being involved with the ICH process and in the ICH meeting and the network, and also being really a driver in the implementation of the ICH guidelines. So for regulator, the first criteria related to the process and the engagement is really to have been participating in at least 3 of the ICH meetings during the previous 2 consecutive years, and to have appointed expert in at least 2 of the ICH working groups. When it comes to the implementation of the ICH guidelines, here the requirement is to have at least implemented 3 of the foundational guidelines for ICH, which you can see here on the screen. The Q1 set of guidelines on stability testing, Q7 on good manufacturing practice, and E6 about good clinical practice. There is also a kind of fast-track process for regulators if you have a proven record of implementation of the ICH guideline, plus involvement in the different meetings and the ICH network of experts. And you find all the details online. As I said, transparency being key. You will be able to find, by clicking on the link, the details on how to apply for ICH membership if you are a regulator. On the same link, you will find a detail to apply for membership if you are an industry representative. And here, membership is open to international pharmaceutical industry organizations like IFPMA. And you have, of course, here again, to be involved in the process and in the implementation of the guidelines with attendance to the meeting, with appointment of experts, and with members or yourself being regulated and affected by the guidelines. When it comes to ICH observership, here the idea is to open the door of ICH to different type of organization. It could be a regulatory authority based in a country or driving regional implementation. It could be organization, again, pharmaceutical international organization who are not yet able to join ICH membership with certain criteria, or international organization with, again, certain criteria who are impacted by the implementation of ICH guidelines. And those observers have the possibility to attend the meeting, to participate in the discussions, etc. They have no voting rights, and they have also not exactly the same duties as the members. Important to note that in the case of IFPMA, but also the WHO, they are standing observers, meaning that they have the possibility to appoint observers in the different working groups, and you will hear more about this in a few minutes. So we are truly global, and you can see here on the screen that most of the countries are colored, and the color represents a specific type of membership or observership. So today, ICH count in total 23 members and 41 observers, with, as I said, this initiative and this drive to open the doors of ICH to newcomers and to really endorse and embrace this global harmonization mission. When it comes to the working group, in May 2025, we were counting 32 working groups, which represent a bit more than 700 experts. And these working groups are divided into different topics, the typical efficiency, safety, quality, and multidisciplinary areas of focus that ICH guidelines have. So what is ICH effectively delivering? I mentioned the word guidelines since the beginning of this webinar. So the ICH guidelines are really what is providing the framework for the implementation of all the good practices that are aligned and decided within the ICH working group. They are divided into different focus areas, and I will come back to that, which are covering the entire drug development cycle. We have also a specific standard on electronic transfer of regulatory information. We have also a very successful project related to common technical documentation, today transformed into everything related to electronic common technical documentation. And last but not least, MEDRA, which is a standardized medical terminology, which is developed and hosted under the ICH umbrella. Here again, if you want to read more about the guidelines, see a few trainings on these guidelines, you're welcome to click on the link of this slide and you will be able to explore the relevant guidelines. So as I said, the guidelines are really aiming at covering the entire life cycle of a drug, starting from discovery, going into all the preclinical research, then the clinical trial, then the control, and then everything related to the approval and the regulatory reviews. And this is really how you should see the guidelines and try to find your way through the ICH journey in order to understand which guidelines are applicable at which point through your development process or manufacturing process or regulatory approval process, and be able to also contribute to the work of the guidelines depending on your specific area of expertise. So starting with the S guidelines, which are the safety guidelines, they are really applicable to everything which is related to the preclinical research. So everything that is related to the uncovered risk, like carcinogenicity, like genotoxicity, or reproductive toxicity of a specific molecule that is going to be used in order to develop a new medicine. With all the development related also to gene and cells therapy, this is something that is very relevant. And so the safety guidelines are always the starting points when you have to look at a new medicine being developed, and where ICH guideline can potentially provide you with a globally harmonized framework. Then you move into the part related to clinical research, and you have different phase of your clinical trials, and this is where the efficacy guidelines, so the E guidelines of ICH, are going to be relevant for you. It's everything related to the design, to the safety and the reporting of clinical trials, and the last one being developed and has been the one related, for example, to the potential clinical trial open to breastfeeding and pregnant women, which is very relevant. Last is related to the Q guidelines for quality guidelines. And here you move to really everything related to the manufacturing of the product, with all the impurity, with all the stability, with all the testing that are needed for good manufacturing practices and for the risk management when you have to start the manufacturing process and the controls of your medicines. So the safety, efficacy, quality. And last but not least, we have this set of guidelines which are very applicable for the marketing application when you have to prepare for that, and then everything related to post-approval activities after the medicine is actually approved and ready to be applied on the market. And this is a set of guidelines designated as the M guidelines for multidisciplinary, because they are really covering different types of topics that do not really fit into the previous category, but are nevertheless critical to ensure the safety and the efficacy of the medicines. It is also where you find the famous MEDRA and the S3 standards. I won't list all the guidelines and give you examples. However, we have a work plan, which is, again, available on the website and giving you access to all the different guidelines which have been developed or are in the pipeline. You will be also able to see the public consultation, which are open by the regulatory authorities in their relevant jurisdiction in order to hear from the stakeholders about the proposed draft guidelines on specific topics. But I've been asked today to also emphasize the benefits of joining ICH. And I would say that these benefits are really multiple, and beyond everything related to the promotion of public health, it shows also a real commitment to align on this global harmonized set of standards for the safety and the efficiency and the quality of the medicines which are going to be produced and made available to the patient everywhere across the world. It is also a way to contribute to this effort of harmonization through the development of these guidelines and the approval of these guidelines. Because as I said, everything in ICH is based on consensus. So every voice counts to make sure that our guidelines are meeting the needs and the expectation of the caregivers, the patients, and the industry in a specific market. It is a possibility to participate in all the decisions, in shaping and proposing different topics to be addressed by the guidelines, in voting, and to also provide expertise on the different guidelines. It is a network of members and observers who are meeting on a regular basis, at least 3 times a year, in order to discuss between industry and regulators about the future of technical requirement for medicines, and to also stay updated on the different opportunities to learn from each other. We have training opportunities. We have a global platform which is providing you with first-hand information. And we have, of course, this possibility of networking across experts. This is it from my side. And as a first speaker, I hope I was on time, and I will take questions later during the panel discussion. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to share with you a bit of details on the role and the benefits of ICH. Over to you, Flavia.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. Perfect on time. Thanks for your time and effort in delivering such an informative session about ICH. Thank you so much. So now I welcome Balbiana Sampaio Oliveira from Anvisa and Andrea Ricciuti from UNMAT, who will present the regulators' journey to ICH membership. They will share experience from regulators in the region, Argentina and Brazil, who are already ICH members. I will start with Brazil and then give the floor to Argentina. Balbiana is a pharmacist and biochemist with over 20 years of experience at Anvisa, where she has worked in key areas such as clinical trials, drug registration, and good clinical and manufacturing practice. She has held the leadership and strategic advisory roles with a focus on regulatory best practice, international harmonization, and project management. She currently serves as advisor to Anvisa's third board of directors, coordinator for Anvisa at ICH, and Brazil representative in the IPRP Forum. Andrea Ricciuti is a technical advisor at the National Institute of Drugs, UNMAT. She's a member of the technical subcommittee of the Argentinian National Pharmacopoeia for both active ingredients and final products. She also holds the position of Mercosul Inspector of Medicines with a focus on GMP. Balbiana and Andrea, it's a privilege to have you both presenting the regulator's perspective today. Balbiana, eu passo a palavra a você. You are on mute, Balbiana.
Sorry. Boa tarde a todos, né? Aqui no Brasil são 12 horas. Então, boa tarde. Obrigada pela introdução, Flávia. É um prazer estar aqui podendo falar um pouco da jornada da Anvisa no ICH. E eu espero poder compartilhar com vocês aí boas histórias e boas recomendações, desafios.
Also, it's important to share with you good stories and recommendations and challenges and everything that is good and all the positives that Anvisa has in these almost 10 years that we've been at ICH. Thank you so much. I will start my presentation now.
Tá, eu vou compartilhar aqui a minha tela.
Yes, you can present. Okay, I will be sharing my
Vamos ver se
screen.
agora fica no modo
Just
de
a second, please.
apresentação aqui. Eu tô tentando.
Let's see if I can now put this in presentation mode.
Vocês estão vendo no modo de apresentação?
Can you see my screen in
Não está
presentation
na
mode?
apresentação, mas a gente consegue ver bem os slides,
Consegue?
Morgana, se tiver
No,
alguma
it's not in
dificuldade, não tem
presentation
problema.
mode, but we can
Eu vou tentar
see
deixar
the
no
slides.
zoom maior aqui, que eu consegui.
Okay, I will
E vou
see if I can do the
passando a tela.
zoom in,
Então, primeiramente eu vou me
and I
apresentar,
will
né?
be
Atualmente eu
passing the
estou
slides.
atuando aqui, eu sou especialista
First
aqui
of
na
all,
Anvisa,
I
sou
want to
farmacêutica,
introduce myself. I'm
trabalho na
currently a
Anvisa
specialist in
desde
Anvisa.
2005 e atualmente eu estou
I'm a
como
pharmacist and I've worked
coordenadora
at
do
Anvisa since
ICH. Então, a
2005,
Flávia
and
fez
I'm
aí uma
currently
introdução
the coordinator of
e hoje eu vou
ICH.
apresentar para
Flavia
vocês, então,
already
sobre um
did
pouco
a
da
quick
nossa
presentation,
jornada
and
aqui
right
na
now I will
instituição
be presenting
é,
about
no âmbito do
our
ICH.
work
Então,
at
a
our
agenda,
institution.
basicamente, a gente vai fazer uma introdução aqui sobre o CH. A Gilardine já fez
As
uma
part of
introdução, eu vou
ICH.
colocar só
This
alguns
is our
pontos que são
agenda. We
importantes
will
para a
be doing an
compreensão
introduction on
da
ICH.
nossa
This was already
trajetória.
done.
Um
We're
pouco
going to be
sobre o
talking
nosso
about a few
começo,
important
né, no
points
CH,
to better
compartilhar um pouco da
understand
experiência de como
our
nós
journey
trabalhamos, nos
and
preparamos
understand
para a gente
when we
entrar como
started,
membros
sharing
do
the
CH.
experience, how we worked, how
Vou
did we
explicar um pouquinho como é que
get
a Anvisa se
ready to be
organizou e
able to
está
be
organizada,
members
né,
of
para gerenciar e
ICH, and I will
coordenar
be explaining
as
how
atividades do
Anvisa
ICH,
got organized for
um
this
pouco das nossas
and how we
responsabilidades, né, como
coordinated the
membros
ICH
reguladores,
activities and our
sobre como nós nos
responsibilities
organizamos em termos de governança
as
e
regulators,
implementação
and
das normas,
how
e depois compartilhar um pouco da minha visão sobre
we
o que
got
são os benefícios
organized
e os
as the
principais
governance and
desafios, né,
implementation,
que foi
and
essa
also the
proposta da gente
benefits
trazer
and
aqui
the
hoje
challenges
para essa apresentação.
in this proposal
É,
to bring
Então,
here and
como
present to
já
you
foi
today.
apresentado pelo ICH, né, ele é uma iniciativa que desde
Okay.
1990
As
constrói
it was
guias
already
que já
presented,
eram
ICH is an
utilizados pela
initiative
Vigilância
that
Sanitária aqui
started
no
in
Brasil e pela Anvisa, que a
1990
Anvisa, desde
to
2002,
look
né, a
at
gente vem
guidelines that
utilizando
had
esses
already been
referentes
consulted by
internacionais,
Anvisa in Brazil
inclusive os
since
guias do
2002,
ICH,
and we've been
para a
using
construção de todo o
the
arcabouço
international
regulatório da
references
Anvisa,
of
que ele vem de
ICH
25 anos para cá,
for
né,
the
as nossas
construction of
resoluções.
everything regulatory related
E
in Anvisa.
desde
And
quando
this has been
começou
in our
as
resolution for
discussões
25 years.
sobre a mudança
And
da estrutura do
this
ICH,
was
né,
since the
da
discussions
estrutura que a gente
started
conhece agora,
for the
depois da
change of the
reforma, a
structures
Anvisa
of
começou a se
ICH.
aproximar do ICH, então a
Everything that
mudança,
we
ela
know
começou a ser
after this
discutida em
reform in
2012, foi
Anvisa
quando a instituição
started
começou a se
approaching
aproximar ali do
ICH, and this
ICH,
change started
começou
to
a
be
participar
discussed
de algumas
since
reuniões
2012.
presenciais,
This is when we
e em
started approaching
2015, quando foi
ICH.
concluída a reforma, foi quando a
We
gente
went
teve a
into
discussão
some
institucional para
in-person
se tornar
meetings in
observador, e
2015, and when the
posteriormente
reform ended,
como
we had a
membros, né?
discussion
Então, essa
to
data de
be
outubro de 2015,
observers
que
and then
marca a
members.
restauração do ICH, ela
So
também
the
marca
date of
a
October
nossa mudança de
2015, which
trajetória e
was
de discussões internas
ICH,
sobre participação na
also
iniciativa.
marks the change in trajectory and internal discussion
Aqui
and participation in
vou
the
falar um
initiative.
pouquinho do começo,
Here,
de
I
como a
am
Anvisa
going
se
to talk a
preparou
little
para o
bit
ICH,
about
e aí eu vou
the
dar
start
testemunho
and
meu
how
pessoal,
Anvisa
né?
got
Porque eu
ready to be a
comecei a
member at
trabalhar
ICH.
no ICH
And I will be
em
talking
2014 com o ICH,
personally.
né? Aqui na Anvisa,
I
como
started
assessora de um dos
working
diretores, foi
with
quando a gente começou a
ICH in
discussão sobre
2014 at
a reforma,
Anvisa
e eu pude
as one of
participar
the
numa reunião
directors.
que teve
We
pré-reforma, que foi
started
em Fukuoka em
with the
2015.
reform,
Naquela época
and
a
I
gente apresentava como
participated in a
observador,
pre-reform meeting in
e aí eu
2015.
retornei como
And
coordenadora
in
do
that time,
CH
we were
agora em
just observers.
2014, em junho.
So
Então, quase
I
aí
went
10
back
anos
as
depois,
So
também
I
como
ICH
started
observer
in
in
então, para poder trazer um
2014
pouco para
as
vocês
an
toda essa
ICH
trajetória da
observer.
preparação, porque eu já
And
sei de
then
perto, assim, né,
in June, I'm going to
comecei a
show
coordenar a
you
preparação da
some of
Anvisa para
my
se tornar membro do
track
CH.
record in
Então,
this
como eu disse, em
preparation because I
2012,
helped
a Anvisa começou
coordinate
a se
Anvisa's
engajar mais em
participation
discussões
for
sobre o
its
CH,
accession
isso foi
to
pré-reforma,
ICH.
e a gente já apontava também alguns especialistas para grupos de trabalho como observadores, tá? Mas eram poucos grupos de trabalho de forma muito pontual. Então, como a Anvisa já estava se aproximando, a gente teve a oportunidade de acompanhar as discussões da reforma.
As Anvisa was already getting close to it,
era muito à tona, assim,
we
na época, era
accompanied
sobre
some
os
of the
modelos de
discussions of this
implementação, né?
reform.
Porque como que nós, países de língua portuguesa e com uma estrutura regulatória diferente, a gente faria essa implementação dos
We wanted to have implementation models that had a
Anvisa e outros
different
países, a gente
regulatory
participava
structure
da iniciativa num
due
grupo
to
que era
the
chamado de
Portuguese
Global
language. And
Cooperation Group.
Following that, Anvisa and other countries that have participated in the initiative in a group that was called a Global Cooperation Group, and we had no decision-making power, only capacity as an observer. But after that reform, Anvisa moved on to being an observer. And with that group, we started the preparation. Because the standards were under the CNH regulations, and in November 2016 we became effective members. So I've told you about how Anvisa is doing currently. Anvisa has a staff of approximately 50 workers. And this includes the 2 representatives that must be appointed by each member, and
26 grupos de trabalho, né, onde a gente aí vai indicar
and other 26 working groups.
Líder, que é o especialista titular, e alterno para participar
and we will appoint at a minimum a lead who is an expert that will participate in each working group. So we have around 50 direct members involved in this process, in addition to our members who participate in the trainings here at the agency. Currently, within the ICH, there is an organization of each member, and we need to have a representative. Today, Anvisa is a part, and the general manager of the synthetic medications area is one of them, and the international affairs person is also a representative of the agency, and myself. I am acting as a coordinator. So here we serve as a coordination and management team in agency. It's not a department, it's not a bureau or an office. We act as a sort of committee, and we manage all these activities. Here, this is a little bit more about the history so that you can see it a little bit better. We've talked about the reform. We've talked about how and when we transformed into members. And here I'm going to show you something that I believe will be very important, such as that in August 2019, this major challenge for us after 5 years of implementation to become members, and then went on to actually being part of it. We were chosen to participate in November 2021 to implement all the things to that point. And I'm going to talk about the implementation experience later on, but in June 2024, so we're at the management committee until the next elections. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Anvisa's preparation to become a member. Back then, we conducted an analysis, an assessment about how timely it was to have to consider Anvisa becoming a member of that initiative. And under that instance, what we did was consider how could we actually participate in this initiative. So we analyzed the opportunities and conveniences of doing it, and we also looked at what the level of implementation of the ICH guidelines was for us. particularly those that were mandatory for members and the others that had to wait for 5 years. So we conducted an assessment assessing the impacts for implementation, the level of implementation, what the impacts would be in the 5-year guidelines implementation. We also looked at the financial issues and all the costs involved, because we would need to think about some larger delegations. And after that assessment, we issued a report, and Visa is comprised of 5 directors who decide upon the things for the agency. So we submitted this assessment to get approval from Anvisa as members, and after that then comes the second part. There was a first part of a presentation where you were able to show that you had a certain stability, that you had what it took to become a member. So Anvisa had already implemented all these resolutions or requirements, and the tier 2, which is for 5 years, there we need to post a regulations, a decree with Anvisa's internal regulations, and we have conformed a commission to have a plan of action and monitoring for these 5 years. In addition to the responsibilities of implementation, we have the responsibility of participating in the assembly of the group meetings and contributing to the development of new guidelines. And there's also a financial commitment to pay a fee every year to ICH. One of the challenges that we had was that, but I'm going to talk about some of the processes that we had for the implementation stage. One of the discussions, which was quite predominant at the time, and I quite remember that in 2015, when we submitted to the ICH Assembly the nature of our regulatory institutions. And in Brazil, we had a certain regulatory structure under a decree, but Anvisa had the autarky and the competence that under the law it could make requirements with a compulsory nature. So we presented all these mandatory documents and required by the legislation, decrees and sections. And these ICH guidelines were incorporated by other countries with the structure that we know. In this shoot that is not a 10, but it's highly recommendable. But it was to be understood as a non-mandatory document. So our question was, what would we do with the Portuguese language for a framework, and how would we work on the implementation model? This slide that I'm showing you, even, we presented it in 2015 before the reform. So what was it that we had here? We had to have a project that was working simultaneously with Anvisa's regulatory actions. We were mapping out all the ways that Anvisa worked in at the time, and we needed to think about resolutions, but we also had manuals, guidelines, orientation, or documents, but were not necessarily part of the internal arrangement, were not considered regulatory documents as such. So we did some work in parallel to that for that project back then when we formalized the guideline document. And there we established that it was non-mandatory, it was just a formal thing, and that was established as an institutional mandatory guideline. And so we were able to start implementing many guidelines just with the translation to Portuguese without having to do high regulatory adjustments. So we managed to make a little translation, but that helps global implementation quite a lot for others to be able to understand how that took place. In addition to the implementation, and Visa had to create an internal governance system for the documents and the responsibilities. As I was telling you, there's no ICH office as such. We are a governance structure that has persons across the agency in different positions that have different responsibilities. Back then in 2019, we created a decree only for ICH governance, which talked about how the harmonization model would work and what the regulatory flow within Anvisa would be, considering ICH flow in the construction of the documents. We created a parallel document and we defined a governance structure. So the responsibilities of the persons participating in the groups, what are the responsibilities, duties, expertise that they should have, technical know-how, do they need to speak English? So there are competences and responsibilities of the different bodies for better decision-making levels of the managers, coordinators, and other directors. So it was all about this governance structure. And we also created a service guidelines, which is a more of working instructions that show a step-by-step of the harmonization flow. So how we incorporate that until implementation. So all this step-by-step took place with our, as regards our regulatory flows. I'm going to show you here because this decree was revised in 2024 based on our experience in 2019. So we perfected the decree, but it continues to deal with flows and processes. Our decree currently says that ICH can be implemented by Anvisa in 3 models. We can work with this mandatory legislation or legal form. I'm going to give you an example. We have a resolution that has a mandatory nature, but it could also be implemented as a recommendation or guideline. We publish in the Anvisa format, and through a Q&A, we have another regulatory model, which is training. Answered and translated questions become a part of a group of the set of questions or FAQ. Now I'm going to talk about the experience of representing or just to show you how we can have these discussions in each of the stages of implementation. And I can tell you that from the time that the discussions about ICH reform started in Anvisa, we are engaging the sector so that it is aware of all the commitments and all the duties or commitments that we were acquiring, but also to discuss the impacts of the implementation. I'll be very brief in talking about phase 2 for implementation of the CTD. Anvisa first started discussing the CTD, but we don't have the CTD implementation yet. But at the time, we started doing a benchmarking, and we had close talks with the agency about the implementation of the CTD because it had an international format, it was a format that already had a technical report adopted, but the companies were adopting this technical model that was already existing in a resolution, which was quite a descriptive model about the order of the documents that had to be submitted in Anvisa. So this was a significant change. It was changing their model to the model of the agency. So we had a conversation with the agency, and we created this CTD, translated to Portuguese, and the CTD was shared with the agencies, and it was shared for 6 months, and it then became, it went into force for the implementation of regulatory processes at Anvisa. And after all these years, looking at this, most of the documents that we receive are like this, and it was very successful, and we want to continue making progress with this CTD that we've been working on for a while in implementation of this tool here. And this is the figure of the CTD for registration and post-registration. Is a non-compulsory guide, but despite it being non-compulsory, it is used in almost all the biologicals. Most of biologicals were used with a CTD form in addition to the other form. CTD form has the purpose of covering our medications and non-ICH, but we included there for registration in Anvisa, and we are receiving it by electronic, by digital means currently, and we are also getting all the process digitally. We could receive hard copies before, or physical documents before, but now it's online or digital. And this product already had a process for registration, and we continue to use the CTD quite robustly at the agency. I can give you another example, which is Omedra. That would be yet another story, but you can see how we work to implement this in phase 2. Here, what we show is how our guidelines work, and we have evolved quite a lot in this format of implementation. We used to have an implementation guideline. And we worked to leave the guideline ready for the national sector, but we saw that that caused many concerns about whether there were specific requirements or not, and we were including them. So we have evolved in this time, but what have we done? We already have these guidelines where Anvisa didn't participate. These are safety and efficacy guidelines before Anvisa became a member. But when we want to start using this information, we create an introductory document in this guideline explaining what are the literal translations, and we make it very clear about what the new implementations are, and what the experience was that we gained through time until we reached this current format, and who participated in building this form. So therefore, we have recommendations for a direct translation for a Portuguese version of the ICH guidelines. So this is very different what happened in 2016 to these new models that we are implementing. And we continue to discuss this because depending on the topic, when you talk about good practices, for instance, you talk about a mandatory standard. But to some guidelines, we only refer without translating, because it would be a very large number of guidelines that we would need to translate. So I believe that this is a process that continues to require being addressed and perfected. So here, just to recap, because we've already implemented this Tier 2, Tier 3. There's no date, but we make an effort to start implementing. We have research, ICH research on the implementation by the countries. We have 72% implementation of this ICH guidelines.
Desculpa, gente, que eu não consegui colocar na tela cheia, eu não tô sabendo solucionar.
I apologize that I was not able to include here on screen that what I was saying, but I'm going to talk about Anvisa as a member of the ICH. I've talked a little bit about Anvisa's history, but I want to highlight here that in addition to advancing in the ICH administrative sphere, Anvisa has also grown its working group. So there are two important frameworks. We always have these specialist leaders in the teams, but since the creation in 2021, Anvisa was able to start acting as a server, is a co-reporting agency, because we're seeking to contribute with the different groups and the administrative discussions. We were already co-leaders in the research and implementation, as I told you before. The previous coordinator, who was the former coordinator, who was Carolina, she participated in this research immediately. We have been co-leaders of the training committees. And recently we celebrated this as we took on the regulation of CM18, and we held about 28 regional consultations here in Anvisa. And one of the meetings will be held in Rio de Janeiro, here in Brazil, in 2026. Now, about the challenges.
Seriam muitos minutos de conversa, tá? Mas eu acho que, pensando assim, como agência reguladora, né? Os custos das participações, ele é um desafio.
So this might be too long, but I wanted to consider the participation costs to the extent that the agency is proposing its participation in other groups, and the delegations start becoming larger. So we could be getting there with a delegation of 20 persons, and that needs to be considered. Must be taken into account, because the agency will put in not only the technical resources, but also the financial funds and to participate in these meetings. And now, cost-wise, also, I believe that's something that we need to consider is, and I'm speaking from my experience, the agency cannot have teams for several groups, because just the fact of being an observer and being there in the meetings of the assembly and starting to participate in these sessions and having a person who is accompanying work and seeing how it's going and appointing a representative for a guideline that is very strategic, only that action brings great benefits for regulatory agencies. It brought great benefits for us just with a 2-people delegation as observers. So I believe that in the long term, if we want to invest in other groups, whether in a specific format, it will bring great advantages in knowledge exchange, bringing in experts from other agencies, networking, it's important to have a very specific participation in these meetings. I also talked about the need for an assessment of the funds or the resources involved. We're talking about approximately 50 servers that, in addition to doing process analysis, are participating in the ICH. So it is a working goal that we have set, and it's a challenge for us. We need to balance out our work first for new matters. And we need to keep our guidelines updated. And this is a major challenge. We have managed to do it, but it's a big challenge. And when we started assessing these opportunities, we saw that another issue that we have in Anvisa, and it was a big challenge before, is no longer, but it was about treating the regulation sector as involving the regulated entities and the representatives of the industry. So, following many discussions, our national regulation sector managed to get a representation for so we participated as agencies with the sector, with the rest of the sector, which is important, because if the agency is not working together with the rest of the sector, the implementation will be very difficult. Another challenge that I wanted to mention is the Portuguese translation, and I've included this as a challenge because here in Anvisa, the validation of the Portuguese guidelines needs to be validated by a specialist, and that requires great effort in translation. We are attempting to translate everything to Portuguese, and we have gotten some help in the translation, but the final validation needs to be carried out by an Anvisa official. We're starting to use AI tools to translate and to facilitate translation, and to be able to increasingly get the guides translated. So we're discussing the use of AI. And it's a challenge for us, the issue of translation, but I am an advocate for this. I've been working quite a lot for us to become members, and we've borne many fruits in the agency. It's been a pleasure to participate in the history of this great team that we formed, and which is growing its membership every day. So I believe that the first thing that needs to be said is regarding the relationships among members, which facilitates bilateral and multilateral partnerships, and also cooperation agreements that improve or enhance engagement. You are not just an observer, you enter the discussions and you are in the technical field. And at the time, we were not in touch with specialists from other agencies. Since 2003, I went on to this area, but I've seen that in all the areas continue to have these challenges that we have regarding this new technology that is coming in. And so that has become very important for the agency. And a second benefit is that you should be able to start being part of drafting the technical references, and not only use this as the resolution itself, because we are building these documents together with the participation of the teams, and we're an active part of the drafting of the technical references. And I believe that that is important for the agency.
Outro benefício é você ter arcabouço regulatório, né? E com esse esforço
to
de
close, there's
implementação, você faz
another benefit,
esforço de
which is
harmonização
having
e você traz para o arcabouço
all of
nacional
this effort of
arcabouço regulatório
implementation.
mais harmonizado internacionalmente, né? Então
You bring
favorece,
here
inclusive, indústrias nacionais que
in a
almejam
more harmonized
ir para
manner,
outros mercados, né? Então, se ele desenvolve
and this favors
dossiê,
national
registro, de
industries
acordo com a nossa legislação, que é harmonizada com o CH, ele consegue, de uma maneira mais fácil,
in accordance
levar
to
esses
our
documentos, esse
legislation.
dossiê de registro, essas informações para submeter em outras agências. E
And we can
com
have all this to
esses
be used
requisitos
in other
harmonizados, né,
agencies.
ele acelera a vinda de produtos para o país. Então, assim,
And with all
lá
these
atrás, a gente
requirements
geralmente
and all
recebia,
this
lá atrás, quando eu falo lá,
harmonization, this
2000
speeds
e
up the arrival
2005,
of new products
2006,
into
bem
the
antes,
country.
assim, a gente costumava receber muitos processos de registro de inovação
So
depois que eles já estavam em fase avançada de
from
análise
there,
em outros
it's been
países. E
many
com o avanço
years
regulatório
to
e com a
receive, or
harmonização, as empresas
years ago we
conseguem
received the
fazer
records when it was
a
already advanced in the
aplicação, né,
country. And with this
concomitante em vários
harmonization,
países, né, porque não é necessário
we can
requisitos
see what we can use to
adicionais para um país
apply
específico. Então, a gente tem
this in a
visto esse
joint manner
movimento e
in other
hoje a
countries.
gente
There's no
recebe
additional
processos
requirements, and
aqui
we see this
praticamente
movement.
para a par com as
And
agências de
today we
referência, né, os
receive
protocolos.
these
E
processes
ainda outro
to work
benefício é que
with
com
the
o ICH
protocols
ele tem
agencies.
muitas
And another
iniciativas de
benefit
treinamento. Então, além dos
also
treinamentos que são
is
vários, que
that
estão
ICH also
disponíveis
has a lot
lá
of
no portal
initiatives
do
for
ICH,
training,
a gente ainda tem a
additional to
possibilidade de
the
solicitar
initiatives that are
financiamento de
available
treinamentos
in the
específicos aqui
ICH
para a agência,
webpage.
em guias que a gente entenda
And
que a
we
gente
also have
precisa colocar um esforço
specific
maior de
training
capacitação.
for
Então,
the agency
esse
so that
ano
we
mesmo,
can
no ano
understand
passado a gente conseguiu
and put
financiamento para
greater
fazer um curso
efforts on the
teórico e
trainings.
prático sobre o
Last
Q13 e a
year,
gente conseguiu com o
found
financiamento do
we
ICH.
got a
Então, esse
budget
também é
for a
benefício.
hands-on training, and we found through this
E
through
aí, gente, só uma
ICH
mensagem
funding.
final, né? Que atrás de uma jornada institucional tem
So I
pessoas,
want to
né, que
leave
estão
a final
construindo
message,
esse
and it's that
caminho. Então,
behind an
o
institutional
caminho da
session,
Anvisa
there's
no âmbito do
people
ICH e junto com o
who are
ICH
building
agora, ele
this
foi
path, and
construído
this path
com
of
muito esforço dos
Anvisa
nossos
hand in hand with
técnicos, né, com a
ICH was
competência
built
técnica deles, com o
with
comprometimento deles, que muitas vezes tem
a
que,
lot
além
of
do seu trabalho,
efforts
fazer os
and
trabalhos
the
de grupo, das
commitment
reuniões
of
em
everyone
horários, né, que são
who,
horários
additional to
difíceis,
their
num fluxo
jobs, had
regulatório,
to
num fluxo
do
diferente,
work from other
fluxo
groups and
regulatório, um
meetings
fluxo
and
diferente,
very
numa
different
língua
work,
diferente. Então, assim,
working
são
with
muitas
different
pessoas
things,
envolvidas,
with
muitos
a different
técnicos que
language.
têm se envolvido e se
So it's
engajado nos
many
grupos de
people who are
trabalho.
involved
E hoje eu vejo que a gente está colhendo os
who
frutos, né,
committed
desse
are
trabalho
committed
árduo dos
in this
nossos
work group, and I
especialistas, assumir
see that
posições
all of us
de mais
are
coordenação do grupo,
reaping
como a
what
gente
we
assumiu
sowed
recentemente.
already in all
Então, é só
this work
deixar essa
that we did
mensagem aí de
when we
incentivo
recently
para
took on
pessoas de outras
this
agências, né, que
challenge.
tenham a
And we
intenção
want
de
to leave
conhecer mais
this
sobre o
as an
CH, estudar.
incentive for the other
Eu acho que,
agencies who
do
have the
ponto de vista,
intention
inclusive, profissional, para os
of
nossos
learning about
técnicos,
ICH,
institucional, eu
studying
falei dos
about it,
benefícios, né? Mas para os nossos
and doing
servidores é
this with
muito
a
importante eles
professional
estarem na
institutional
iniciativa
view
e
for
poderem fazer essas
our
trocas técnicas
technicians
com
and
pessoas que estão
servers. And
nos
it's very
mesmos
important to
desafios
be
que
here
eles aqui, com
with this
relação às
challenge and
revisões, às inspeções
exchanging these
de
technical
processos.
practices.
Então, aqui eu
So the part
finalizo
of also in
minha
the part of review
apresentação
and processes.
e agradeço aí a
And this
oportunidade, fico à
is it. This
disposição.
was my presentation. I want to
Muito obrigada,
thank you for the
Bobiana, por
opportunity,
compartilhar
and
suas
I am
experiências e
available
perspectivas
to
sobre a
answer any
jornada da
questions. Thank you
Anvisa
so
como
much
membro do ICH. Tenho certeza
for
que
sharing your
o que você compartilhou
experiences
aqui hoje é muito valioso para
and
novos
the
membros e também
Anvisa
para aqueles que desejam se tornar membros
experience. I know that
do
everything that you've
ICH.
shared with
Muito
us
obrigada
is
pela
very
oportunidade
important
que
for
você
the people who are new or who want
Ahora
to be a
me
part of
toca
ICH. Thank you
anunciar
so
a
much for
Andrea
your
Ricciuti,
participation.
quien compartirá con nosotros las experiencias de AMAT con ICH hasta la fecha. Andrea, muchas gracias
Now
por
we have
estar
Andrea
con
who will be
nosotras.
sharing
Tienes la palabra.
with us. Andrea, thank you so
¿Qué
much
tal?
for
Buenas
being here.
tardes a todos. Me
Good
presento. Mi nombre es
afternoon,
Sabrina Filipico
everyone. I am
Surovic,
Sabrina
del programa
Filipico
de
Surovic
Relaciones Internacionales de
from the
ADMAT
Program of
y
International
coordinadora
Relations of
de
AMAP,
ICH Andre
and
ADMAT.
I'm the
Y a mi lado
ICH
se
coordinator.
encuentra
And
Andrea
here
Ricciuti,
I have
jefa
Andrea
del Servicio de
Ricciuti,
Inspectores
the head
de
of
Inspecciones
Inspectors
Reguladoras de
Services of
ANMAT, esta representante
Regulatory Inspections
de
of
ANMAT
AMAP,
ante la ICH,
and
al igual
she
que
is
Mariano
a
Saborido, que hoy
representative of
de mano
AMAT
nos puede acompañar.
for
Y sin más
ICH, and
preámbulos,
she can
si
be
nos
here.
aguardan un segundo, vamos a compartir pantalla.
And if you just give us a second, we're going to be sharing.
Ahí pueden ver la presentación.
Can you see the presentation here?
Estamos vendo sua pantalla.
Perfecto, gracias.
Falta que esté en pantalla completa, si lo quieren probar. Formato presentación.
No.
Y tal vez cambiar la configuración para que no tenga el modo presentador.
Ahí la pueden ver en modo presentación.
Can you see this in presentation mode?
Não está em modo apresentação, pero podemos ver.
It's not in presentation mode, but we can see. If you want to continue like this, it's fine.
Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Okay, good morning,
Es un
everyone.
placer para mí
It's a
estar
pleasure for
aquí y
me
compartir la
to be here
experiencia
and to
de
share this
la Administración
experience
Nacional de
of the
Medicamentos,
National
Alimentos y
Administration of
Tecnología
Medication, Food,
Médica,
and
ANMAT,
Medical
en su
Technology,
camino
ANMAT,
hacia
in its journey
convertirse
towards
en miembro
becoming
regulador de
a
la
regulatory
ICH.
member of ICH.
Este recorrido no solo
This
representa
journey
un hito para la
not
institución,
only
para la ANMAT,
represents a milestone
sino
for
también
ANMAT
que
as an
es un
institution, but
avance
also
estratégico para la
it's a
regulación
strategic
farmacéutica en
advance for
Argentina
pharmaceutical
y
regulation
en
in
la región.
Argentina and in the region.
¿Puedes pasar? Sí. Okay. Bueno, un poco Sabrina ya nos ha
So Sabrina has
presentado,
already
así que voy
introduced
a
us,
avanzar con esta
so I will be moving
mina.
forward.
Y un poco
And
quiero plantear el contexto, ¿no?
I want to just state the
Sabemos
context.
que el Consejo Internacional de
We know
Armonización
that
es
the
un
International
espacio
Council for
de
Harmonization is a
cooperación
space
internacional
for
que
cooperation,
busca
international
desarrollar
cooperation that
directrices
seeks to
técnicas y
develop
científicas
technical and
para
scientific
garantizar la
guidelines
calidad,
to guarantee
seguridad
the
y eficacia de
quality,
los medicamentos de los
safety, and
humanos.
efficacy of
En América
human
Latina,
medications.
la
In Latin
presencia
America,
en ICH
the
ha
presence
sido
in
históricamente
ICH has been
limitada y el
historically limited,
camino para
and
integrarse como miembros plenos exige un compromiso
in the
sostenido,
journey to integrate
tanto
as full
técnico
members,
como
there is a sustained
institucional.
commitment, both technically and
En ese
institutionally.
contexto, las autoridades
In this
regulatorias,
context,
como un
the
poco
regulatory
escuchábamos en
authorities,
Boliviana,
as we heard
que han
from
logrado el
Bagiana,
estatus de miembros
who have
de
achieved the member
ICH, son
status
Anvisa
of
en el
ICH,
2016,
are ANVISA in
COFEPRIS
2016,
en
COFEPRIS
2021 y ANMAT
in
en
2021, and
2024.
ANMAT in
Por otro lado,
2024.
tenemos hace
On
muy
the other hand,
poquito,
we have very recently,
en 2024, en la Asamblea
in
de
2024,
Montreal,
in the Assembly
DGMID
of Montreal,
ha logrado el estatus de observador.
DGMID achieved the observer
INVIMA es
status.
observador y recientemente en
INVIMA is an
Madrid,
observer, and recently in
Navisa
Madrid,
también ingresó
Navisa
como
also
observador ante el
started
ICH.
as an observer from ICH.
Bueno, esta foto es el día
In
en
this
que
picture,
la
this
foto
is the
grupal
day of the group picture
de la Asamblea de Fukuoka en
of the
2024, donde
assembly in 2024,
ANMAT logró
where ANMAT
su
was able to
incorporación como miembro
get
pleno.
or become
Entonces,
acknowledged
en
as a
nuestro
full member.
caso,
In our case,
todo el inicio, el
that
proceso
everything
comenzó en
from the start, the
2019 como
process started
observador,
in 2019 as an
participando en
observer,
asambleas y
participating in
familiarizándonos con la
assemblies and
dinámica de
getting
trabajo
familiarized with
de
the
ICH y con
work
la
dynamics
implementación
at
de las
ICH and the
directrices.
implementation of the guidelines.
Como bien decíamos,
As we were
los
saying,
presentadores anteriores,
or the
presentadores
previous
anteriores,
speakers
perdón,
were saying,
ser miembro trae beneficios,
being a member brings
como
benefits,
participar activamente en la
like
asamblea,
participating
poder
actively in the
votar,
assembly, being able
proponer
to vote,
temas de
proposing
discusión.
topics for discussion.
El salto de observador a miembro
The
pleno
leap from
no es
observer to full
automático,
member is not
implica
automatic.
cumplir con
It
una serie de
means
requisitos,
meeting with a
contar
series
con
of
personería
requirements,
jurídica,
having
tener la
legal
responsabilidad de
status,
regular productos
having the
farmacéuticos de uso
responsibility of
humano,
regulating
participar
pharmaceutical products for
como
human use,
observador en
participating as
más de 2
observers
asambleas consecutivas,
in more than 2
contar con
consecutive
expertos integrando los
assemblies,
grupos de trabajo de
having
ICH.
experts that integrate the ICH work
No está
groups.
representado por otra iniciativa
It's not
de
represented
armonización
by
y
another
demostrar la
harmonization
implementación de las
initiative, and
directrices de
demonstrating the
nivel 1.
implementation of the
En
level
estos
1
años,
guidelines.
ANMAT
In
cumplió
these
cada uno
years,
de
ANMAT
estos
met
puntos
with
y en
each
el
one of these
2024
points,
logramos ser
and in
aceptados como
2024, we were
miembros
able to be accepted
reguladores
as
plenos.
full regulating members,
Este
regulatory
reconocimiento
members.
es
This
fruto de trabajo
recognition is a fruit
coordinado de equipos técnicos de las
of the
autoridades
coordinated
y de
group
expertos que han representado
of the
al
authorities and
país en
experts that
distintas
have represented
instancias
the country
internacionales.
in different international instances.
Como hablaba previamente, uno de los
As
pasos
I was
es
saying before,
cumplimentar con
one of the steps is
las
to
directrices de
complement
nivel 1
with the
en el
level
caso
1
de ANMAT
guidelines in the case of UNMAT
y con las diferentes directrices,
and with the
la
different
E1
guidelines
de buenas prácticas clínicas,
for good
la
clinical
disposición
practices,
ANMAT que
UNMAT
sigue
provisions
los lineamientos de ICH, es la
that follow the ICH
6677 del
guidelines,
2010,
these
que está implementada y
77 of
vigente.
2010, that is implemented and effective.
Con respecto a
In regards
Q7,
to
buenas
Q7,
prácticas de fabricación y control para
good
ingredientes
manufacturing
farmacéuticos
and control
activos,
practices for active pharmaceuticals,
la disposición vigente
the
4151 del
current
2023
provision 4151 of
es la que cumple
2023
con directrices
is the one that meets with guidelines
de ICH y está
of
actualizada porque
ICH
ADMAT
and is
viene
updated because
cumplimentando con los
UNMAT has been
lineamientos
complementing this with the
de GMP
guidelines
desde el año
of good
2004,
manufacturing practices
pero
since
esta
2004.
nueva versión
But
se
this
encuentra
new version
actualizada según
is
PICS
updated
en la parte A, B de la misma
as
y
per
los
PICS in
anexos.
Part A,
Y
B, and
esta
the annexes.
última versión de
And
nuestra
this latest
normativa
version
cumple plenamente
of
con
our
las
regulation
directrices
fully meets with
Q7.
the Q7 guidelines.
Respecto a Q1,
In
estabilidad, en
Q1,
ANMAT siempre
instability
se han seguido
at
los
UNMAT,
lineamientos de
we've
ICH.
always followed the
En
ICH
el
guidelines.
2023
In
se emitió
2023,
la disposición ANMAT
the
4061
UNMAT provision
y
4051
su
was issued,
implementación, por
and its
lo anteriormente dicho,
implementation,
que se seguía lineamientos, siempre siguió
because
lineamientos de
it
ICH,
always
no
followed
significó un
the ICH
impacto
guidelines, did
significativo
not
en la
mean
industria.
a significant impact on the
La ANMAT se
industry.
ha adherido y
UNMAT
aplicado
has adhered
sistemáticamente a lo
and
largo
applied
del
systematically
tiempo todos los
in
elementos,
time to all the
conceptos y
elements
principios
and
relevantes
concepts
identificados
and
en estas
relevant
directrices.
principles identified in these
Esto
guidelines.
nos ha permitido alinear nuestros
This
estándares
has allowed us
regulatorios
to
con los
align our regulatory
internacionales
standards
y dar
with the
previsibilidad al
international
sector
standards
productivo y a la
and give
investigación
visibility
clínica.
to the productive sector and clinical research.
Viene un desafío
There's a
que
challenge,
complementar con las directrices de
which is
nivel 2.
complementing with the level 2
Estamos
guidelines.
trabajando intensamente en la
We are
implementación de
working
estos
very
lineamientos.
hard in the implementation of these guidelines,
Ya
and
implementamos M4, o
we
sea,
already implemented
el registro
M4
CTB para productos biotecnológicos y
for
biológicos. Y nuestro objetivo
biotechnologicals
es
and
implementarlo
biologicals,
completamente
and
para
our
todos los
goal is to
medicamentos.
completely implement it for
Para cumplir
medications.
con las guías E2 y
To
M1,
meet with the E2
implementamos
and
programas
M1
DigiFlow
guidelines, we implemented
con
DigiFlow
base nacional
programs
de reacciones adversas
with the National Base of
y
Adverse
reporting con
Reactions
disposición ANMAT
and reporting with
3031 del
UNMAT provision
2024 para
3031 of
notificaciones
2024
relacionadas con
for
sospecha de
notifications related
reacciones
to
adversas
suspicions of adverse
relacionadas con la vacunación e
reactions related
inmunización
to
y
vaccination
otros
and
problemas de
immunization
seguridad
and
relacionados al
other
uso de
safety programs
medicamentos.
related to the use of medications.
Realmente es un orgullo para nosotros
It's
compartir
sense
la
of pride
activa
for us to
participación de
share the
expertos
active
que tiene ANMAT
participation of experts
en
that
diversos
ANMAT
grupos de
has
trabajo
in different
de
working
ICH,
groups of
contribuyendo al desarrollo
ICH,
de guías
contributing to the
y
development of guidelines
de guías de gran relevancia y para calidad,
of
seguridad
great
y
relevance
eficacia
for
de
quality,
medicamentos.
safety,
Realmente,
and efficacy of medications. And
nuestros expertos no solo
our
están abocados
experts
al trabajo
are
intenso
not
que
just
requiere participar
working
en los
really
grupos,
hard,
sino que
and this
tienen
is what's
todos
required
sus
to participate in these
diferentes
groups, but they
actividades en
have
distintos
all of their different activities
sectores
in different
de la
sectors
administración.
of
Entonces es un
administration.
esfuerzo
So it's
muy grande
a
para
huge
complementar
effort
y tener una
to
participación
complement
activa.
and have an active participation.
Actualmente,
Currently,
ANMAT tiene
ANMAT
representantes en 11 grupos de
has
trabajo.
representatives in 11 working groups,
Nuestros especialistas participan en
and
1 o
our
5,
specialists participate in 1
la
and
calidad de
5
revisiones
quality
específicas
of
sobre
reviews. They are
estabilidad.
specific on stability.
Q36, mantenimiento de guías
Q36,
para residuos,
maintenance of
isotoxas residuales,
guidelines,
perdón. Y 20, ensayos clínicos
and 20
adaptativos.
adaptative clinical trials.
M1, puntos a considerar en MEDRA
And
para la
there's
armonización
points to be
de
considered in MEDRA for the
terminología médica,
harmonization of
utilizada en la
medical
evaluación de
terminology.
medicamentos.
They use
En
the assessment of
E2D,
medications,
gestión de
E2D,
datos posteriores a la aprobación.
data management after
En el
approval,
grupo de trabajo de discusión de
in the
terapias
working group
celulares
of
y
cellular
terapias
therapies
génicas.
and gene therapies,
En el grupo de evaluación de riesgo y
in the
control de
group
impurezas de
of risk
nitrosaminas.
evaluation and control of
En el
impurities,
estudio de seguridad no
in
clínico
the
para terapias
safety
basadas en
study for
oligonucleótidos.
therapies based
Evaluación y
in
recomendación de textos
oligonucleotides, the
farmacopeicos
evaluation and recommendation
para
of
uso
pharmaceutical
en
texts
las regiones de
for
ICH.
the use in the regions.
Consideraciones para uso de evidencias
Considerations for the
del mundo
use of
real en la toma de
evidence
decisiones
of the real
regulatorias,
world in
especialmente en
regulatory
lo
decision
relacionado con
making,
eficacia.
especially in things related
Y
to efficacy,
M18 en el marco
and
de
M18
determinar la
in the
utilidad de estudios
framework of
comparativos
determining the
de
use of
eficacia en el
comparative
desarrollo de
studies
biosimilares.
and efficacy in the development of
La
biosimilars.
participación de ADMAT en estos
The
grupos
participation of
refleja
ANMAT in
nuestro
these groups
compromiso
reflects our
eh,
commitment
con la cooperación internacional,
to
la
international
actualización
cooperation,
científica y la mejora
scientific
continua,
updating, and continuous improvement.
siempre con el objetivo de
Always
proteger
with
la
the
salud
objective
pública
of
y garantizar
protecting
el
public
acceso a
health and
medicamentos seguros,
guaranteeing
eficaces y
the
de
access
calidad.
to safe and
La
efficient
participación
and
en
high
estos
quality
grupos
medications. And the participation
no
in these
solo nos
groups
permite adoptar
not
las guías,
only
sino
allows us
también
to adopt
influir en
the
su
guidelines, but also
desarrollo,
have an influence
aportando
in their
la
development,
perspectiva de nuestra región.
contributing the perspective of our region.
Nuestra integración como miembro
Our
pleno
integration as
no
a full
beneficia solo a
member
Argentina,
does not
porque
benefit
en
just
América
Argentina.
Latina aún
In Latin
hay pocos
America,
países
there
con
are
esta
very few
posición,
countries with this
lo que
position,
nos da la responsabilidad
which gives us a
adicional
responsibility, the
de
additional
compartir
responsibility
aprendizaje,
of sharing lessons
generar
learned,
sinergia y
generating
facilitar la convergencia
synergies, and
regulatoria
facilitating
regional.
the regional regulatory convergence.
Esto fortalece a la
This
región en
strengthens the
negociaciones
region
internacionales,
in international
mejora la
negotiations and
competitividad de nuestra industria farmacéutica
improves the
y sobre
competitiveness of our
todo
pharmaceutical industry,
favorece el acceso de la
and
población
especially favors the
a
access
medicamentos
of the
de calidad,
population
seguros y
to
eficaces.
high quality medications that are safe and
Podemos
efficient.
pasar, la última, en síntesis,
Our final
el
slide,
ingreso de ANMAT
as a
como
synthesis,
miembro regulador
um,
pleno
and MAT
es
having
un
become a
logro
full
colectivo,
regulatory member
fruto de
is a
muchos años
collective
de
achievement,
trabajo
and it's a fruit
técnico,
of many
de
years of technical
articulaciones
work and coordinations
interinstitucionales
that are
y compromiso
interinstitutional
con la excelencia
and
regulatoria.
commitment to regulatory excellence.
Agradezco a todos
I
los que
thank you
trabajan,
all.
a todos ustedes por escucharme y a todo el
Thank you
equipo de
everybody for
trabajo
listening and all of the work
de
teams
AMAT
of
que hicieron
AMAT
posible este
who made it
camino
possible
y
for us
espero que
to
esta
go down this
experiencia
journey, and I
pueda
hope that this
inspirar a otros
experience
países de la
can
región
inspire other countries in the region
y avanzar hacia una
and
armonización
move
internacional. La
forward
verdad es
towards
que
an
desde ANMAT
international
hay muchas
harmonization.
ganas.
From
No sé si
UNMAT,
hay
there's a lot of
tantos
will. I don't know if there are
recursos, pero las
so
ganas
many
y el
resources,
esfuerzo por
but
trabajar y
the
mostrar
will and the effort to work and to
la
show
intención
the
de participar
intention
es mucha. Así que
of
muchas gracias a los
participating
dos.
in, which is a lot. So thank you so much,
Muchas
everyone.
gracias. Muchas gracias, Andrea y
Thank you,
Sabrina, por
Andrea
compartir las
and
experiencias
Sabrina,
de
for
AMAT en ese
sharing
primer año como
Amat's
miembro de
experiences in this
ICH.
first year as an
Es muy
ICH
alentador para
member.
mí ver lo que AMAT
As
ha
I said, it's
logrado
very
y lo que
encouraging
aún
to see what Amat has
por lograr
achieved
por la armonización global
and
en
what they
la
still have to achieve
Muchas
for this
gracias por su
harmonization. Thank you so
presentación.
much for your presentation.
Next, I'm pleased to introduce Lydia Samardich, who will speak about the industry participation through IFPMA. Lydia is Manager of Regulatory Policy at IFPMA, and in this role, she also serves as ICH Coordinator. Her work focuses on supporting various initiatives and advocacy efforts aimed at strengthening regulatory systems. Lydia, it's a pleasure to have you speaking this session. I'm happy to hand the things over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Flavia, for the kind introduction, and my sincere thanks to everyone involved in organizing today's event. It's my pleasure to be here with all of you. As Flavia announced, I will be presenting more about IFPMA engagement in ICH and the role we play in this important global platform. Just to move to the next slide. So in ICH, IFPMA represent research-based national or regional pharmaceutical trade associations that operate within the regulatory jurisdictions of ICH regulatory members, but outside Europe Union, Japan, and US. So what does it mean? At the moment, we are representing 14 national trade associations from 11 countries. Here you can see the list of countries, and you can notice that we are representing innovative industry from 3 countries from the region: Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. And importantly, when new countries from your region becomes ICH member, it means the chance for innovative industry from that country to be also engaged in ICH activities through IFPMA. Already, Geraldine mentioned that IFPMA is a standing observer at ICH together with WHO. So what does it mean? As a standing observers, we can attend meetings of the ICH Assembly and the Management Committee. We can fully participate in discussions, but without voting rights. We can nominate up to 2 delegates to attend those meetings. Also, we can appoint experts, 1 expert and 1 alternate to working groups. And finally, we can appoint ICH coordinator, who is the main point of the contact between ICH Management Committee delegates, our experts, our national trade associations involved in ICH group, and between ICH Secretariat. As you can see in the picture on the right side, there is also Madras Steering Committee. We saw this picture before, and why I'm sharing this, because I'm pleased to share that IFPMA has recently joined Madras Steering Committee with a 3-year mandate. We appointed 1 representative and 1 alternate to participate in Madras governance, and this is really important step for us as well. This gives us an opportunity to contribute to the ongoing development and maintenance of the MedDRA as a vital medical terminology standards that supports global regulatory communication and drug safety monitoring. So as you can notice, we are engaged in ICH Management Committee, ICH Assembly, MedDRA Steering Committee. We are also we have appointed ICH coordinator, and really important part for us engagement in working groups. So I will today present more about our engagement in the working groups and how actually the experts from these three mentioned countries at the moment can participate in these activities. Here you can see the list of working groups, ICH working groups or discussion groups where we have appointed experts. This make a total of 21 experts and 20 alternates across 20 working groups and one discussion group. And what is also important to say that for each of these topics, we have established IFPMA task force. And who are the members of IFPMA task force? First, working group or discussion group expert. The title for this role officially in ICH is standing observer expert. We call this expert lead expert of IFPMA task force. So that's the same person. Also, alternate is part of the IFPMA task force and task force experts. As you can see here, working group expert and alternate, they are directly engaged in a working group, while task force experts are actually engaged on a task force level. So they participate task force meetings, and they are part of the task force with the aim to share their associations' views and any feedback on ICH related topics, and support, of course, lead expert in representing IFPMA in a working group. So we established task force from the reason that we really get voice from different countries and to be sure that we represent innovative industry from all countries we mentioned before. We don't have a task force experts from all of the countries mentioned previously in each task force. It depends, of course, of the interests from trade associations, but we always try to have as many as possible when we are talking about the number of countries in one task force. Lead expert is actually responsible for organizing task force meetings and consolidating the feedback received from all task force experts. When I say we establish task force, how we are doing that? When ICH establish actually some new working group, we always have also a call for a nomination, and we are trying to identify the lead expert, alternate, and task force experts. We have selection process, and then we nominate lead and alternate to ICH, and also we appoint task force experts in our internal task force. As already mentioned, we have a right to appoint one expert and one alternate. One of the criteria is, of course, English. These experts should be fluent in English. We know that sometimes it's a barrier, but when we are having experts from different countries, the English is the only way how they can communicate. Also important criteria is that experts that are appointed to the given working group should have the necessary and adequate scientific expertise to actively contribute to the work of the working group, and also to be actively engaged on a continuous and regular basis until the work is completed. So this is for a lead when we are talking about the working group, and also this is the same for task force experts, but just on a task force level. And I already shared where we have appointed the experts and actually in for which topics we have established task forces. So here I wanted just to share with you that for all these purple colored topics, task forces, we have appointed experts from LATAM region, actually from Brazil and from Argentina. And I hope that in the near future, we will also get some experts from Mexico. When I say we have appointed experts, it means that some of them are working group experts, some alternates or task force experts, but for all of these topics, we have voice from LATAM region involved. At the moment, we have around 25 experts from LATAM region, and the most of our experts are from China. Then on the second place is Brazil. We are really happy to have more and more experts from Brazil. And also, we are really proud getting more experts from Argentina. Jaime is also very engaged. We know Andrea already mentioned that ANMAT is quite new ICH member. So at the moment when ANMAT became a member, Jaime joined our group and start nominating, appointing experts in a task forces. We hope that in the future, with having when we get more new ICH members from LATAM region, we will also get more and more industry experts in our task forces. This is actually just briefly from my side about our engagement. If you would like to read more about that, you can check, actually visit IFPMA website, and there you can find one 2-pager brochure explaining more about our engagement in ICH. And of course, we are always looking forward to all your questions for more details. Thanks, and over to you, Flavia.
Thank you very much, Lydia, for sharing your insights on the role of IFPMA in ICH. I appreciate the time your effort you put to present this to us today. So we now move on the next part of this webinar, which consists of a discussion panel and a Q&A session. This panel will feature our previous speakers, Geraldine, Bobiana, Andrea, Lydia. And additionally, I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce new panelist members, Maestro Cristian Jesus Garnica Vergara, Diretor Ejecutivo de Comercio Internacional e Publicidade, de COFEPRIS, Sheila Inada, Regulatory Affairs Manager, AstraZeneca, on behalf of Interpharma Brazil, Rosana Mastelaro, Director of Technical and Regulatory Affairs at Sindus Pharma, and Carolina Cian, Director of Regulatory Affairs at KM. So, mi primera pregunta va para Maestro Christian. Maestro Christian, es un honor tener a ti acá conozco en este panel. Voy a hacer la pregunta. COFEPRIS tiene el compromiso de implementar los guías de ICH de Tier 2 para el año de 2026 y ha estado avanzando significativamente.
Has to implement the guidelines for 2026, and it's been advancing in this process. Could you share the status of implementation of ICH at COFEPRIS? Of course. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to share this space with you, with all our colleagues from Latin America and all those that may not be Latinos, but are part of our work team and are joining up efforts for international regulatory convergence, reliance, and the participation in international fora. Regarding the question, precisely the COFEPRIS experience and our work down this process since 2021 that we've been members, I must tell you that this has been a process where we not only participate as an industry, as an agency, but we need the industry support. COFEPRIS took it very seriously to become a member of ICH. We've been actively participating in some groups, but of course, we still need to further participate in others, and we continue to put more of our efforts in some of that we've been notified of, However, this also has to do with funding and institutional issues, but we're always seeking convergence with all of you. Regarding COFEPRIS, I want to tell you that COFEPRIS currently is implementing the e-guides nationwide. You may remember that for the implementation of these guides for each member, they require us for stage 1 to incorporate issues having to do with stability, good practices and good clinical practices. Stage 2 would have to do with ETV and pharmacovigilance issues, and step 3 would be the adoption of all other guidelines. I want to tell you that COFEPRIS is currently undergoing through a stage of modification of its regulatory framework. We have a project for a standard of good clinical practices, and with the standardization of this, we would be complying with E6. We're 95% fulfillment in level 1, level 2, E2B, M1, M4. We would be close to 100% implementation for level 2, and level 3 or stage 3, which is what we're currently working on. We are at approximately 23% implementation. However, COFEPRIS is working to implement the e-guides, efficacy guides, and at COFEPRIS, we try to work with the industry, and there's been a scientific committee that has been created, and this scientific committee appoints the working groups for good regulatory practices. And what this group does is that it brings together people from the regulated agencies to the regulators, and all these people can talk about scenarios and situations. And we, COFEPRIS, also propose some ideas, and we brainstorm to get a final document where we implement the information of these guidelines based on our national regulatory framework. It is not only work done by the authority, we always try to include the participation of the industry, academia nationwide, so that they also know of the work that we're doing or that is being done internationally. Within the working plan for this 2025, we have the ICH guidelines, Q9, the Q guides, and other M guides that are pending. And we also would be working in the working plan of the scientific committee to include new efforts for participation in other working groups that we have yet to participate in. I personally can tell you that before this position that I hold now, I participated with Q6, and it was 2 years of hard work. It's not over yet, but I want to thank the team that opened up their doors even at a time for me to work on that. This work went on to someone else, but I'm very grateful for all the experience and the contribution, the knowledge that from the team that was formed back then. For September this year, COFEPRIS would be finishing the efficacy guides. Currently, it is divided into groups of guides or guidelines, 11 to E15, E16 to E19. And this is so that we can do the translations, and that we form the working group, the industry working group, with all the stakeholders. Within COFEPRIS's experience, we want that we can also participate in other international forums that's beyond ICH. so PRRP and others, INGA, where we're also participating actively. We are also members of medical devices. And I believe that one of our efforts as authorities is not to focus on one single channel, and our reach as authorities go beyond the inputs. We also are talking about our outputs and products and services. We're talking about cosmetics, tobacco products. All this is within the reach of COFEPRIS. So we are splitting ourselves in many different parts to be able to check on all of these products. We are actively participating in working groups and activities and strengthening or building our capacities. We are always seeking training and bilateral and regional cooperation, streamlining processes through good regulatory practices. We're also currently in a process of digitization and simplification of procedures, which also is promoting reliance and the updating of our regulatory process to modify existing regulations or create new ones in accordance with international standards, in this case, ICH. This is what I can tell you from the side of COFEPRIS. I am very grateful for everyone's attention. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christian, for your elaborate answer. For us, it's great to see COFEPRIS' detailed approach in Mexico, which is quite encouraging to see. Thank you for your participation. And my question now goes to Sheila, who's representing Pharma. You are the first representative of an association of Brazilian industry for the working group, and this is a reason of great pride for all of us. I would like to know a little bit about your experience as a specialist and what were the main challenges. What learnings could you draw from this experience? And in your opinion, was it worth it, all the effort? Flavia, can you hear me? Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this panel to discuss a topic that is in my heart. It is a matter of great pride for me. And as you said already, Flavia, regarding co-question and challenges, I think that this is a new process for me. When I started out, I didn't really know what to do and what my expectations were, and how to interact with others. But with time, I started getting into the mood of it, and with everyone's support from my company, what I can say is, as after 4 years, is how can we balance out the demands or the requirements and having this role of specialist and discussing and actively working within this great working group, and with the routine, with the everyday life, how to balance out these two sides is a major challenge for any professional. And that is why it is important, or what's best is that the company leader is always supporting the specialist, because there are times when demand is much higher. But with this role of support from the specialist, makes things quite easier. I had turbulent times when I had to renounce certain things, but I was always supported by my leaders to be able to finish my work. And I was very well supported by this team. And this is something that we learn with time. Of course, I cannot deny that there were not days or nights or weeks that had to be exclusively devoted to these activities, but I view that as something that is inherent to the work, because this is a project that quite contributes to our CV, the resume of any professional. I would do it again. I recommend it. It's been a great work in my career. It's been a lot of work, but the learnings it brings are huge, and this convergence with global specialists, bringing in visions from other countries and extremely rich professional experiences. And professionally speaking, that cannot be measured how much that contributes to your career. So I do recommend it. It's a matter of great pride for me to have become an ICH expert from Brazil, and see that some Latin American countries have an active voice through industry specialists and regulatory agencies. That is a matter of great pride for me, because this allows us to see how important the voice of Latin American countries is for the world right now. So I'll leave you with that message. Thank you, and I leave you with congratulations for the great work.
Balbiana, o engajamento e o diálogo precoce
My
entre
next question.
e a indústria são fundamentais para identificar e abordar possíveis barreiras para a implementação dos guias do ICH no país.
How to address possible barriers for Anvisa in the country. How is Anvisa acting to ensure orderly and expedited implementation of ICH guidelines in Brazil? Thank you, Flavia, for the question. As I said at the beginning, we are pursuing a governance structure and a standardized flow to bring in ICH guidelines for discussions with the sector. These processes could take years until we can come to an implementation stage. So what do we have concretely at the agency? We work at our workshops and our office to try to update or adapt ICH's guidelines. We have these two regulatory frameworks from the international setting. We're bringing an overview of what the ICH pursues, and during the international instances, or when we get to these stages, we try to enrich our discussions to make a technical contribution. And a challenge there is to have the technical experts from the sector committed, from the scientific sector committed in this stage where we're still at step 1, step 3, and we're working in this document that continues to be built. So we want to continue to incorporate new tools for this commitment, but at all times we try to promote discussion on the most relevant technical issues. But there is already a document, a more consolidated document that is ready for internal discussion. It is a very important stage for the Anvisa to incorporate the ICH. And we have another stage, which is implementation, and it will depend on whether the guidelines are going to be consulted for a resolution. So this is going to be a discussion not only of the technical methods, but also the impact required by the implementation of this guideline or by the sector. This is another thing that we need to work for, and where we need to promote further discussion so that we can be more accurate in our implementation strategies. That I believe that's what we need to do. We need to evolve in our regulatory discussions. We need to have internal discussions on several alternatives, on technical issues, so that we can change a little bit our format, and to discuss matters that need further technical discussion, but it's a challenge to incorporate actions into all the demands that we have. I believe that there's a lot of room to continue to perfect discussions on experience exchange and sharing. Thank you very much. And I believe that now, Rosana, I have a question representing the Brazilian pharmaceutical industry. She's a member of ICH. How can associations promote ICH-related discussions, and what is the best time to hold these conversations? That's something that we need to improve on so that we are better aware of what's coming and how to facilitate this implementation. What can you do to promote or to further these discussions? Hello, Flavia. Good afternoon, and from here from Brazil. Thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you, IFPMA, for the opportunity given us to participate. Flavia, your question is quite relevant because, as it was mentioned before, we started to contribute from the moment of public consultation, and with the opinion of members or specialists, we were able to promote meetings to share all this information with the members and to train not only professionals but all members. And also at the regional consultation, we're gathering all the members and associates to assess the matters, and we draft comments or remarks for health authorities, which in Brazil is Anvisa. And I see that quite surely, given this expertise of Brazilian companies, this contribution is from a technical aspect, and it could benefit the implementation of and adaptation based on the Brazilian reality. So I believe that's an important thing. It's a contribution for IFPMA, for the discussions, for the whole pharmaceutical sector in Brazil. Thank you very much, Rosanna.
Geraldine, how does the ICH Secretariat support new members or observers during their onboarding and participation?
Thank you very much, Flavia. So the ICH Secretariat is actually going to develop a specific strategy to further support the new members in getting access to the information, and also in being able to map the relevant experts. As Sheila mentioned, it's sometimes very overwhelming, so it requires a lot of time and also a lot of passion from the experts to be able to contribute. And as mentioned by Babiana, we have already a lot of working group running in parallel, 32. And so we are really trying to streamline this number of working groups to make sure that the number of requirements coming to the desk of the expert is easier to manage for the ICH members, because they do have this commitment to provide expertise into the different working groups. We are also working with the observer, and that was one of the questions answered in the chat, in order to help the observer to continue their journey on ICH. So to give some visibility to the public consultation, to give some visibility to the training, also to help different authorities and organizations who are part of ICH to work together on a common understanding and implementation journey of the guidelines. So it is going to be the next step of the ICH strategy, and of course to embrace all the challenge, but the opportunities linked to modernization of the drug development cycle and the drug development manufacturing, which is critical, and to make sure that we are also acknowledging all these new capabilities. So it's working together and hand in hand every day that we try to help the members and the observer to continue the ICH journey.
Perfect, thank you so much. Ahora tengo una pregunta para Amat.
Now I have a question for Amat. Andrea or Sabrina, what internal changes or training measures did you incorporate before joining ICH or after? Could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear your question well. What internal changes in AMAT or training programs or measures do you implement before or after joining ICH? Well, it's ongoing training at AMAT. The fact of becoming members enhanced our commitment in that sense. But it's an ongoing thing. This includes internal trainings as well as trainings with experts, and each member of the working teams represented by AMAT has a different development in the path regarding training. There's not a system implemented per se, but this has always been a purpose pursued by AMAT, ongoing training. Thank you, Andrea. Now I have a question for Carolina Siam. Omati became a member of ISATIA as a year ago, and therefore the agency committed to implement Tier 2 guidelines. How do you visualize KM's role to ensure the implementation of the ICH guidelines in Argentina? Well, thank you, Flavia, for the question, and thank you all for the opportunity of sharing this panel with different representatives and officials from different countries, all with the common goal of advancing and strengthening global healthcare. PCAME, as a chamber that is representing the pharmaceutical industry for research and development in Argentina, we view the participation of ANMAT as a regulatory member of ICH as a transcendent milestone for our country, which not only ensures the commitment of the agency in the implementation of these regulatory standards internationally, but it also opens up a broader array of possibilities to work for the benefit of the patient. And that's commitment to implement Tier 2 guidelines in 2029 is ambitious and undoubtedly calls for coordinated work that invites us to contribute in two dimensions: facilitating early and constructive dialogue between the regulatory activity and the industry to address the barriers to implementation by promoting ongoing training, sharing experiences and practices from other ICH member countries through workshops and seminars and other technical materials, and promoting other collaborative spaces, analyzing the implications challenges and opportunities from each of the guides or guidelines to ensure quick and efficient implementation. One of the challenges in the process is to ensure the alignment to address the topics from the perspective of all the stakeholders. And that calls for the joint participation of the industry and the countries to strengthen the local context, ensuring that the ICH guidelines are not only understood scientifically, but that they can be coherently applied to the national context. In addition to the participation of national experts and leaders in the working groups, we also have participants and experts, but also leading some of the groups. And there are many benefits and from the great pride of being a part of this space and the way that it enriches our perspective and our personal space. We're following a very special path for Argentinians because we've very gladly received the invitation to be part of these workspaces. And the consensus is being built here. Standards are being drafted here. This has an impact on the health of thousands of people. So, and this shows that transparent and science-based collaboration accelerates the implementation of the guidelines, it optimizes the use of resources, and ensures that patients have access to safe, efficient, and quality medications. And that is why harmonization is not an end to itself, but a powerful tool to drive innovation, ensure reliance on regulatory systems, and generate a tangible and positive impact on public health. So I want to thank you once again, because this type of initiative not only allow us to exchange experiences, but also motivate us to continue building together a more integrated, effective, and people-centered regulatory future. So that is why I'm convinced, and we at KM are also convinced that through collaboration, we will be able to advance to full implementation of the ICH standards in Latin America. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carolina.
One last question.
Last question.
On IFPMA. So Lydia, very quickly, if you could answer for me. So we learned from you how the industries of the ICH countries represented by IFPMA can engage in ICH. So beyond IFPMA's involvement in committees, working groups, and task force, what are other ways IFPMA can assist the national trade associations and regulators in their journey of ICH guidelines implementation?
Thank you, Flavia, for the question. And yes, that's true. We mostly talked about engagement in the guideline development, but also important segment is our support in implementation of the guidelines. We can support training sessions and workshops to help different stakeholders to better understand and effectively implement ICH guidelines. And actually, this is what we already heard Carolina also now mention, that it should be that we should understand well. So interpretation of the guideline is really important, and that's why workshops and trainings are so important part, and we really try to do our best to support. We had experience that we support by helping to prepare content for the training agenda, or to nominate speakers, not just IFPMA speakers, also speakers from another regulatory or industry members, trying to help to some regulatory authorities or industry parties to reach out to different stakeholders and getting some recommendations also for speakers. Also, we try to share lessons learned, best practices. Just our IFPMA ICH group help us that we get experiences from different countries and to share with another countries. For newcomers, all advices are always helpful. So we are always trying to share experience of experienced ICH members. And also we try to connect all these members and that they can collaborate between them and share all these useful information. This is actually just a part of everything. I will not go further because of the time, but we hear how much the exchange of experience experience important. And also Carolina mentioned that we motivate each other. So I think that sometimes it's enough just to motivate others, show them that it's a huge step to become member. Okay, it's a huge commitment, but what is the benefit of that? And what we brings, that's a crucial. And that's why it makes all of us, I think, involved in ICH activities really passionate. This is what Geraldine mentioned, that passion is something which really leads all experts and all people engaged in ICH activities. And that's true. We are really all passionate and motivated to benefit from and make these standards really as a global harmonized standards. And why we already heard a few times, the reason is that we really make faster access to patient access to quality medicines worldwide. And that's the main reason. So we always try to do our best to really support all these activities. Thanks, Flavia. I will not go further because of the time. Thanks.
Lydia. No, thanks. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your invaluable experiences and perspectives on ICH in your respective roles. Your insights have been incredibly helpful in understanding the role of ICH in promoting global regulatory harmonization and where Latin America stands regarding the ICH implementation. Thank you very much. And as we come to the conclusion of today's webinar, once again, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our speakers, Geraldine Lissobonnet, Balbiano Oliveira, Andrea Ricciuti, and Lydia Samardik for sharing their invaluable expertise and perspectives. I would like us to thank our great panelists, Maestro Christian Vergara from Coffee Press, Carolina Cian, Sheila Inada, and Rosana Mastelaro for the rich and productive discussion here today. Thank you all for your dedication and commitment for advancing global harmonization through ICH. And in today's webinar, we have deepened our understanding of the vital role ICH plays in global regulatory harmonization and how regulators and the industry can be active partners in this journey. I sincerely hope that the learnings shared today can inspire more regulators in our region to become ICH members, and that the local and regional industry experts can be active partners in this journey. We look forward to continue this important conversation, and I invite you to join future webinars that will discuss the relevant changes brought by two relevant guidelines, the ICH M4Q, the CTD for quality information, and also the ICH E6, good clinical practice. This will be a valuable opportunity to hear from experts engaged in ICH on these guidelines development. Thank you for your participation and see you all on Tuesday in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.